Welcome back into the Vandy Sports Podcast on the 440 Sports Network. I'm your host, Billy Derrick, alongside my compatriot and partner here, Joey Dwyer. He had a big weekend, of course, in Nashville at Hawkins Field. He was were you at all three, Joey?
Yes.
Okay, all at all three games. So we'll talk a lot of baseball. Vanderbilt drops 2 out of 3 to Tennessee. They get a huge win on Sunday to stay alive. And, because if they don't get that win, maybe you need a sweep over Kentucky or at least a series win. So we will get to all that. But first, we'll talk about the Anchor Impact. Commodore Nation, you can get closer to Vanderbilt athletics than ever before with Anchor Impact. They are the NIL collective, of course, at Vanderbilt. Gain access to unmatched exclusive coverage and be part of a one-of-a-kind community. As an Anchor Impact member, you gain exclusive privileges and benefits, offering deeper engagement with student athletes, coaches, staff, and the entire Vanderbilt community. Access behind-the-scenes content, such as our interviews, exclusive events, unique merchandise, and personalized experiences, creating an unparalleled connection with the student-athlete's journey. Join the mission of Anchor Impact today to support student-athletes and elevate Vanderbilt athletics to new heights. Help the Commodores thrive and contribute now by logging on to anchorimpact.com/register. And now this is where Chris starts talking about ice cream with the Murfreesboro Pure Milk Company, a family-owned third-generation milk and ice cream distribution company. They bring us our baseball content all season long. That partnership at Murfreesboro Pure Milk began over 50 years ago with Purity Dairy in Nashville to provide purity milk and ice cream to consumers in Middle Tennessee. And they now serve Southern Kentucky, Northern Alabama, Chattanooga, and North Georgia. For more info, visit their website at mpmci.com. Joey had some windy days, but I do think yesterday you probably could have used some ice cream maybe after Game 3. It was a hot one, but the wind was blowing, and I think a funny part of those first couple of days was the wind was a huge factor in some big home runs for Tennessee that ended up hurting Vandy, of course.
Yeah, I think the home run difference was pretty evident this weekend, and J.D. Thompson and Devin Futrell's ability to keep the ball in the yard on Sunday was, I think, a huge factor for this Vandy team. Before we go any further, I want to shout out Asher Sullivan. I think everybody needs to keep Asher Sullivan in their prayers. Tim Corbin had his brother in the dugout last night. Yesterday. I thought that was a classy move, but I think this is a time for the Vandy community to really rally around that family who's had a difficult go of it. But I think it was fitting that Vandy won the game yesterday with Declan Sullivan in the dugout. Felt like Vandy had the energy that it needed yesterday, particularly from J.D. Thompson. He was kind of the alpha that emerged, and this team hasn't had that really all season. He even said that. He said, I think they've had a lot more energy than we've had throughout the weekend, and J.D. Thompson was a guy, again, who stepped up and really I don't think you see that from a Vandy pitcher very often, but he did the sticky stuff kind of gesture towards the Tennessee dugout, which obviously I don't know if everybody loved, but I think it was what this team needed, even if it wasn't the best thing for them at the time. Devin Futrell, again, came in and gave him some big innings, but the first 2 days were really concerning, Billy. I mean, Vandy should never be on a 9-game losing streak to Tennessee. It should never be on a 7-game SEC losing streak, and it's a tough league, but this program's got to be above that. This is the saving grace of the athletic department, and Tennessee is a team that has dominated every other part of the athletic department. So this was the program that had to get it against Tennessee, and they got one. But moving forward, getting one probably shouldn't be the standard for it. Being on a streak like that left a bad taste in, I think, all their mouths. And I think, again, seeing where this thing was before Sunday really sparked a lot of talk about what changes need to be made. And I think the first 2 days of the series kind of indicated to you that there are some changes that need to be made this offseason, whether that's with the NIL, with the portal, with the roster construction, the recruiting profiles, maybe even with the staff in some ways. Something's got to give here, and they're not bad, and I think they could win a game or two in a regional. I think they could win a regional, but they've got to change something. And I think the first 2 days of that series and looking at the bodies on these two teams kind of told you that.
Yeah, first off, I'll second what you said there about the Sullivan family. Definitely keeping them in our prayers. And I was, of course, wasn't able to be there all weekend, but I was watching yesterday, and late in the game, of course, Vanderbilt's up 3-0, and the ESPN first off did a great job. Tom Hart, Chris Burke breaking it down and kind of giving some background. And of course, people in Nashville, know the story, but just just a great gesture from Coach Corbin, and knowing the family and Asher, probably tough on Corbin and Maggie as well. But that I do think I'm with you, Joey. I think that was fitting. That was a fitting day for Vanderbilt, and a nice day for them to win, and just get the vibes back up. Because if you sweep, or if you get swept again by Tennessee for the third straight year, I think we are both looking at this season as a potential streak ender of the 17 straight regionals. Now again, they would still have a chance in Lexington, and then a chance to win some more games in Hoover. But this win was big. I mean, it was big just for the psyche of the team, I think, more than anything. Because you look at it, Tennessee has, and JD Thompson, I thought, had some really good thoughts after the game, and he said, yeah, it's been in our head, it's been in the back of our heads. We've been frustrated the last few years against those guys, and they're a mouthy group, but they're a good team. I mean, they gave credit to him, and Corbin did as well. The Vandy dugout knows how good Tennessee is, and I think they know that they just beat a really good team. And even after the game, you could just see a little bit of relief on Tim Corbin when he went to shake the hands of the other assistant coaches. And I think it was a big sign of, okay, this team has some pride left, and maybe, just maybe, they use this momentum, Joey, in Lexington, and then in Hoover. And JD Thompson was confident. Now I think Vanderbilt needs everybody to sort of hop in the JD Thompson wagon here, and and act like him, and maybe play like him, Joe. I mean, you talked about it, and I think this is kind of the theme of maybe not the series, but yesterday for me. All weekend Tennessee's playing with swagger and confidence. Not that Vanderbilt wasn't. I mean, I really thought they played just about as well as they could, barring maybe Friday night. I mean, I think Tennessee obviously did enough to win, and they deserve to win Friday. I think you could argue Vanderbilt should have won Saturday.
Yeah, imagine if that final hit gets through the infield. We're talking about a completely different thing this weekend, I think.
Yeah, maybe it gets to the wall. Maybe it score. I mean, it definitely scores one, and it could have scored two potentially. So I think this Vanderbilt team was closer than a lot of people think to winning this series. But at the end of the day, Tennessee did what they had to do, and winners win, and it's kind of indicative of where these two programs are now. Not that Vanderbilt is off the cuff and certainly not making the tournament this year, but they're not at Tennessee's level. Now they're not. I think what this proved, Joey, and I know Vanderbilt was at home, and they'll probably be on the road for a regional, but I think this proved that Vanderbilt, they can hang and they can compete with the elite teams. Now, again, they haven't done that consistently this year. This weekend was honestly an outlier, when Vanderbilt has played elite teams. But I look at it and I think it was a great ending to a great ending. Of course, I know they lost the series, but I mean, I just keep thinking about the alternative. If you get swept, the vibes are a lot lower, Joey, than they are right now.
Yeah, I think yesterday was huge for them. And that was the first game all season that Tennessee was shut out in. So it kind of tells you what JD Thompson and Devin Futrell did. I think Futrell's 3 strikeouts and the 7th were probably the biggest 3 outs of the game. That was a fantastic inning by him when he came in. And I think he even said, I had a bitter taste in my mouth when I came in that game because I had lost so many in a row to Tennessee, which that was an interesting thing. Every game this year, when we've talked with Tim Corbin, it's felt like this team has had a business as usual type of approach. Yesterday, it didn't feel like that. Yesterday, it felt like they knew they had to get that one, and they played like it, Billy. And I don't know that I'm willing to say that they can hang with everybody because look at the Texas A&M series, and I don't know that they win this. I don't know if they win a game if they play at Lindsey Nelson, but I think they have enough to where if they get the right matchup in a regional against a team who doesn't have a bunch of power hitters, or if they play in a hitter or a pitcher friendly park, I think they got a real chance. You look at the starting pitchers this weekend. Bryce Cunningham was excellent on Friday, and I think he was a lot better than the stats even indicate. I thought he brought them what they needed and gave them a chance to win that game, but the bullpen really let them down. Miller Green, I think, he got one guy in the 6th or the 7th, and then in the 8th kind of fell apart for Brendan Cyber. And I just think that's kind of the issue that I have is like, those guys are talented, but if you have freshmen who you're having to consistently turn to who don't have blow you away stuff in the late innings, I think you're in a real tough spot. And Grayson Carter, I mean, he hasn't really produced either, and he's the only guy who really has the blow away stuff in the back end of the bullpen. So they have talent, but I'm really concerned about their bullpen, Billy. Like, Tennessee is an outlier, and it's going to make you pay more than other teams are. But that can't consistently be a theme to where Cunningham gives you a great outing, Holton gives you a great outing, and then the bullpen throws it away. The Vandy is not a team that's built to play from behind, and if its bullpen is making it play from behind in the last few innings, they're going to have a really hard time, especially without Jaden Davis, without Chris Maldonado. They can't win if their bullpen can't seal games for them, and having to throw Devin Futrell like that, I think, is an indicator of what Tim Corbin thought of the bullpen. He said the day before that he trusted them, but having to throw a guy like Futrell in that spot, and obviously that's a huge spot, but if you can't trust somebody out of your bullpen there, and they didn't have a lot of guys available either, but I just don't think they have enough right now. And Ethan McElvain, I don't know if he's particularly close either. It seemed like a foregone conclusion he wasn't going to be active this weekend, so we'll see. But the bullpen's concerning, but you got to tip your hat to Bryce Cunningham, to Carter Holton, to J.D. Thompson, as well as Devin Futrell. Those were the guys that gave them chances this weekend, and they didn't get blown out like they did last year.
Mm-hmm.
Bryce Cunningham got shelled last year against Tennessee, and if I remember correctly, Futrell did as well. So nice showing of guys rising to the occasion, although I think it would have been a little different story in Lindsey Nelson. Vanderbilt's pitching really good in the first few innings. I just don't know if they have enough in the back end.
Yeah, I mean, that's the concern. And I think Holton went 5 on Saturday. Maybe if he's able to get to 7 at least, maybe we're talking a little bit differently. I think you got to give credit to Tennessee's batting order and their lineup for just battling against Carter and kind of getting him out earlier than obviously Vanderbilt would have liked. And then, of course, you go to Carter, and we know what happened, Christian Moore. And I'll say this, both home runs against Miller Green on Friday night and Grayson Carter on Saturday, it's not like they were obvious, missed pitches and then Tennessee just mashed them 500 feet. Miller Green's was a curveball and missed a spot, left too much of it over the plate, but even that was a little inside. It was an inside part of the plate, and Sears just kind of, lifted it opposite field and got it over the left field monster. And then, Christian Moore in right field, and the wind looked like it was howling to right field. You look at the tree out there over the right field wall, and I mean, the wind took that one and very easily could have been foul. But they got out, and, Vandy's bullpen has to be better. I mean, they have to be better. And Tim Corbin knows that. I mean, after the game on Friday night, I think it was, right, Joey? He said, well, what did he say about all I remember was Jesus. What was the quote?
We've got what we've got unless Jesus comes into the picture.
Unless Jesus comes into the picture, yeah. So
you see the guy on Twitter who posted the picture of Jesus when Ari tweeted about Devin Futrell?
I did.
That was a great tweet.
That was objectively a great tweet. But I mean, that explains where they're at. And I mean, Corbin's right. Now, Miller Green can pitch better than he did against Tennessee. He's done it. He's a freshman. Cyber is capable. He's a capable guy. Maybe he's more of put him in one inning, get some ground balls, get you out of an inning type guy. But again, he can be better. Ethan McElvain, when does he come back? I think not having him available this weekend, obviously what was a killer. Luke Guth, Joey, I thought did okay. I think he's a guy that obviously is going to have to step up. Levi Huseman not being a factor, I think has hurt this team a little bit. Ryan Ginther not performing very well has hurt this team as well. Sam Leboki, a fifth-year senior type guy. I think both of us talked about him being a guy they could rely on. Hasn't been the case. Grayson Carter, same thing. So there's some older guys, Ginther, Carter, Leboki, guys like that just haven't performed. And, that has hurt. You've had to force freshmen into action, and they've done as best they possibly can. And Sawyer Hawks, is he really injured, or has he, what's happened there? I mean, obviously I would guess he's injured right now, but again, you never know the whole story. So I think getting McElvain back is huge. And then figuring out a role for Futrell, because in a regional, Joey, a lot of times you will have to play 4 games. Now, again, not all the time. You can win three in a row and you've won the regional. But, 4th game in a regional, is that Futrell's start? I mean, you would think so. But, I think once you get to a super, potentially, Vanderbilt could be in decent shape if you have Futrell able to come out of the pen. JD Thompson as well. And if you get to a game 3 in a super, of course, Thompson would be the guy. But, you're right, Joey. The bullpen is the biggest concern. Let me get to the bats real quick, too.
Yeah,
I thought I thought the bats, and I watched your rapid reaction. I thought they, did as much as they probably possibly could. On Friday night, you probably need to score more than 4. But even 4, a lot of times on a Friday night at home for Vanderbilt is enough to win. They shut out Mississippi State 4-0, but you're playing Tennessee. So again, you probably need to score more on Friday, but Saturday they hit some balls really hard. Friday night they did too. They got unlucky there with Alan Espinal at the end. Kojal had a home run. Kojal all weekend, Joey, I thought looked really good. And Barzy put some really good swings on some balls, Corbin said, and those will turn. They just didn't fall. They had a lot of unlucky swings. Now Tennessee did as well on Sunday, but so it kind of came back around. But Joey, you can't blame the bats too much this weekend. It's rare to say that this season, and I think that's a good thing to say that. That's a good sign for this team going forward. But then you've got this new concern, the bullpen. So again, it's kind of a plus and a minus there. But getting the bats confident again, I think was big. I know you're at home and you're against a Tennessee pitching staff that isn't great, but statistically they're second, third, fourth in a lot of these pitching categories. So Joey, I was pretty impressed offensively, to be honest.
Yeah, I think the first 2 days are kind of a double-edged sword when you look at who got the hits, because Friday night, Vastine went 0 for 4, Diaz went 0 for 3, Austin was 1 for 4, Espinal was 0 for 4. Those are kind of your go-to guys, and Polk was 1 for 4 as well. So I think them scoring 4 runs and manufacturing 4 runs, obviously Jacob Humphrey was kind of the beneficiary of that. He was really good on Friday night, wasn't really good the rest of the weekend, but I think that's where I look at, and it's for Saturday's a similar story. Vastine was 0 for 4. Austin was 2 for 4. Espinal 1 for 5. Polk 1 for 4. So I think they've got to get more out of their guys per se, if they're going to consistently be a better offense, which they didn't get the first 2 days of the series. Sunday didn't really get much out of anybody. Espinal hit the homer, and Vastine was good, I thought. But I think that has to be more the blueprint to where you're getting stuff out of your best guys. If you're going to win games in the postseason, it's got to be that. It can't be, we got to have this freshman step up, or got to have this guy at the bottom of the order, this J.D. Rogers, Jacob Humphrey step up and have an automatic performance. And that's what it's felt like when their offense has really thrived this year. Is you remember LSU, they scored 13 runs. It was Braden Holcomb's day that he really dominated. Braden Holcomb hasn't been in the lineup in a while. It's got to be your guys producing from here on out. And I think their offense has the potential to be good enough, but it's got to be led by the guys who they expected to lead it. And I think that's the path to consistency for them. Right now, I don't know if they have a consistently good offense. Friday was all right. I was honestly surprised they scored as much as they did on Friday, just because it came from Humphrey primarily. And if he hadn't stepped up or he hadn't been in the lineup, it was going to be really difficult to see. Friday, Billy, we didn't even know if Jacob Humphrey could swing a bat on Friday morning. And then Friday night, he had best performance of his Vanderbilt career. Saturday, I thought their offense was the best it was all weekend, and maybe in a while, probably better than even Georgia on Sunday. They hit balls hard all day, and Corbin even said they were a little snake bitten on Saturday. So the power wasn't necessarily there a whole lot throughout the weekend. They hit 1 homer, I think, each day. And that's not going to be enough to win against a team like Tennessee generally, but their pitching was so good, especially with their starters, that I think it gave them a chance. And again, that's what this team is really. But yeah, I think their offense was better than I thought maybe, but still not good enough to consistently beat a team like Tennessee. If they play Tennessee 10 times, I would think.
I'm with you. You need more out of your guys, and your guys are, the older guys that have been in the program and should be performing for you. Now, Jack Bolger, of course, has been in and out of the lineup. I think he played left field yesterday. He's been in the DH role occasionally. I think Bolger, and I've said this before, you're going to need him to come up with some big swings here down the stretch, whether it's in Lexington, in Hoover, in a regional. You're going to need him. Calvin Hewitt, obviously, he's more of really a guy that you might pinch run in some big situations. He hasn't been relied on at the plate, and honestly, he hasn't done a ton at the plate. I think Jacob Humphrey is intriguing to me, Joey, because you insert him back into the lineup in right field, and his first swing of the bat in a while is a home run. And
Mm-hmm.
so, I think Humphrey, he's a veteran guy. He's fast. When you get him on, man, he's such a weapon. And so I think it'd be interesting to see, how much he plays this weekend. I would think he does, of course, because he was a big catalyst this past weekend. Holcomb, do we see Holcomb? Maybe Holcomb's a guy that gets some pitch hit opportunities late because, I mean, these games, to not see Holcomb this weekend, I think was indicative of maybe what his role will be down the stretch with some more big games coming up. Colin Barzy, I mentioned it earlier, Joey. I've been impressed with him, and Corbin has as well. Again, he's only hitting 171, but he's put some good swings on the ball, and more times than not, he has found the barrel and done his part. And I think those will turn for him, like Corbin said. I think Davis Diaz and Troy Leneve have to do more. Yeah, I mean, Davis Diaz, he's been in this program for a while. So has Troy Leneve. And Diaz hitting 266. He put some better swings on the ball Sunday, but Diaz has got to be better. Same with Leneve. Kojal, like I said, he's doing just fine. I mean, as a freshman, you can't ask for much more from him so far, especially this past weekend. He had been struggling, of course, but kind of got back on track in Athens. And now, this past weekend against Tennessee, he's putting some really good swings on the baseball. I think seeing the ball really well. Espinal, again, not hitting for a great average, but, got to his 10th home run. Vandy's, they got a guy in double-digit home runs. But, what was that?
Finally.
I know. I thought
Took
that
him
was
long enough.
Yeah. And then, Vasty, Polk, RJ Austin, those guys, Austin, Polk, and Vastine, and then throw Espinal in there. Those guys have to perform. But if you get Diaz, if you get Leneve, if you get Bolger making some big swings, Humphrey, all of a sudden, Joey, this lineup, I think, can do some damage with a decent matchup in a regional. So I wanted to get to offensively because I think I don't want to say carried them, but I mean, you take Espinal's swing out of it on Sunday, maybe that's a different ball game, and I know the wind was blowing all weekend, but both teams are playing in it, and so I think Vanderbilt to do that was big. So again, Vanderbilt salvages the series; they don't get swept, which I think was massive. Joey, you look at where they're at in the RPI right now. I think we both tweeted about this morning. They're at 28 in the RPI. They are now 6-14 against quad one teams. So back to the quad discussion here, Joey. I think
system, Billy.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is against quad four, and maybe quad four doesn't matter, but I'm sure there are some teams in the top 30 or top 40 of the RPI that may have worse quad four records. I think if you look at it, Joey, Vandy's quad four, and I just lost it. I think it's something like 17-3, I want to say. And so, they've got the resume. They just need to get 1 to 2 more wins. And I know in the mailbag, probably later in the week when we do our podcast, we'll get some questions about that. But kind of moving forward, Joey, obviously huge series in Lexington. If they can win the series, they're fine. They're in. I think we can comfortably say they're in. That would be 14-16, and 14 wins gets you in more times than not, and almost every time. 1 win, you're probably sweating, unless you go win the SEC tournament, which with this group, they did it last year. Can't count them out, but that's going to be tough to do. Mm-hmm. So I think we're in the same spot here, Joey, as most people. If you get 1 and then do a little bit of damage in Hoover, you should be fine. If you get 2, no matter what you do in Hoover, you should be fine. You should have a bid and extend the streak.
Yeah, another thing I look at is their strength of schedule, which is top 20 in the country, which should probably help them. I know a big thing with basketball the last few years was Stack was, we got a high strength of schedule, and then it didn't matter anyway. But I do think that'll probably help them as well. I'm in the same boat as you. 1 win at Kentucky, I feel pretty good about where they're at. As long as their RPI doesn't get tanked in the other 2 days, I think they'll be okay. It does scare me that they're 28 instead of 22 now. I didn't know if I thought it would go down that much, but it did. And Billy, it's interesting. It's a little closer than I had thought it would be when I was on the Rapid Reaction yesterday, but I'm still going to think that if they get 1 in Lexington, they're probably okay, because Kentucky's going to help their strength of schedule too. Mm-hmm. I don't know that losing 2 to them is going to kill your RPI either, so I think they've got a chance. It's interesting to think that they're this close to the bubble, but they've got a huge weekend this weekend, and they've got to bring it. And I do think they match up better with Kentucky than some other teams, especially Georgia on the road. Georgia looked like a disaster from 1,000 miles away. But I think they got a chance. Two more hitting things I want to note real quick, and we'll keep talking about the tournament. Looking in their last 14 days, the two guys hitting over 300 or hitting over 360, Camden Kojal hitting 360 with an OPS of over 1,000. RJ Austin, again, huge bright spot on a team that hasn't had many of them recently, hitting 367 with an OPS over 1,000 as well. Kojal actually has the highest OPS on the team in the last 14 days. But just wanted to note that Austin, I think, has been a huge guy who's really been responsive and answered the call when a lot of the team hasn't. So shout out to him there. But they're going to have to answer the call again this weekend, Billy. This is a huge weekend and one of the bigger weekends in recent memory for Vandy baseball.
Absolutely. And I'm with you on Kojal and Austin, really. I mean, RJ Austin, it's almost like every time he gets up there, you would expect, a hit in some form or fashion. And getting him on base, we can't forget, is a weapon. So you got to get guys like RJ Austin on base, get Humphrey on base. I think just finding ways, and even if Hewitt's in the lineup, find a way to get Hewitt on, whether it's a bunt or a single or whatever it may be. But yeah, Joey, this is another big weekend. And I was thinking about this last night, kind of thinking about the game and where this team's at right now. Of course, 12-15 in the SEC. You could say they are in the middle of a tournament right now. I mean, a kind of a sudden death playoff right now. Not as extreme as that, maybe. LSU is probably in sudden death right now. Maybe Florida, Vanderbilt, maybe a leg up on those two teams. But to the Tennessee series, that was the start of the playoffs, really, for Vanderbilt this year, you could say. And I think having that playoff mindset again this weekend should help this team. And then you get into the SEC tournament at Hoover. I mean, that's an actual tournament. So again, you continue the mindset of surviving and advancing, and then you get into a regional and maybe you're a little bit more comfortable. Maybe you survive and advance and feel comfortable because you have played that way. So again, I think that has been huge, and we have lost Joey. I think I got Joey back. He's back. But what I was getting at is that I think it's been good and probably will be beneficial, Joey, these last couple of weeks, that they've had to, scratch and claw and survive and advance, and maybe they feel a little bit more comfortable in a regional because they've had to win games like that before. So I thought about that, and I think that could help this team. So again, in Lexington, no midweek game, but every SEC series this weekend starts on Thursday, if I'm not mistaken. So Vanderbilt will travel to Lexington, I would guess Wednesday night, play Kentucky Thursday night at 5:30, Friday night at 5:30, and then Saturday at 11 a.m. The Saturday game will actually be on SEC Network, and then the SEC tournament here in a couple weeks. So that'll be a big SEC tournament for Vanderbilt, one way or the other, as well. I know they won it last year, but that'll be big just to prove and continue to build confidence. So, Joey, anything else on baseball? I think we've got some basketball stuff to get to, but any parting thoughts on baseball there?
No, I don't think it was a great weekend for them, but I think it was a huge day for them yesterday. Just seeing what they did and how strong their chin was, Billy, seeing that they were able to respond to what happened the first 2 days in a positive way. And I don't know how many times throughout the last year or two that we've said, well, they've got this guy going on Sunday, maybe he can stop the bleeding, and it's never happened. And then it happens yesterday in a huge way. Big outing by JD Thompson. And again, he was the alpha that this team needed. He was the tone setter that this team needed. And I don't know if they have a whole lot of guys like that on the roster, but having him answer the call like that and having Alan Espinal hit that homer, and his numbers have been way worse than I thought they would have been, but it feels like Alan Espinal consistently gets big hits for them. So I don't think you can put enough value on that, but big win for them yesterday. And I think they got a real chance going forward, and I think we would have had a much, much different tune if they hadn't found a way to win that game yesterday.
Absolutely. I mean, it's big for pride, if anything, right? I know you lost the series if you're Vanderbilt, but just getting some pride back and staying afloat and, showing that you do have fight and you're not gonna go down, like you have the last couple of years to Tennessee. You're not just gonna fall down and kind of succumb to what Tennessee has become. But Vanderbilt is still there. They're still, Tony Vitello after the series yesterday said they're still the same program they've been. I mean, they stylistically, for the most part, they are. Obviously, we know they're not what they were in 2019 or 2021, but they're still Vanderbilt. They're still coached by Tim Corbin, a two-time national champion. So I do think that Sunday was a nice reminder that there still is pride in this program and obviously a proud tradition. So Vanderbilt,
they got to beat Tennessee again, though. This can't be a one-off. Like this
no,
can't be what it has been in recent memory. This isn't.
No.
That's not what it's supposed to be with this program. Like it should never be like, oh, we're super excited that they win one game, and
no.
I think that's kind of what it's become, which can't be the case moving forward.
No, it can. I think to carry this over, like if they, for example, if they were to go to Knoxville next year and take 2 out of 3 or sweep, that would carry it over. And Vanderbilt, they needed that. I mean, again, you still had the feeling of you lost the series, which obviously is now 3 straight to Tennessee. But I'm with you, Joey. It cannot remain the way it has been in this state. Vanderbilt is better than that. I mean, they are. I think they'd tell you. So Vanderbilt and Tennessee, fun series though. I mean, those were Sunday was kind of you could argue a dull game, but you still got the JD Thompson antics, which I'd be interested to put truth serum on Tim Corbin and company to see what they thought of that. But again, I don't think they hated it if you asked them, but Vandy needed that, and they needed that fire. They needed an alpha type guy like JD Thompson, even though he's a sophomore, to say, let's go. I mean, let's take this game. And I just think it was a good indication that these two teams, the rivalry is healthy, even though Vanderbilt might be slightly down. They're still able to take a game and make the weekend as a whole competitive. I think that was another bright spot, Joey. Like if Vanderbilt was to just get swept off the face of the earth again this weekend, I mean, we would be talking a lot different tone. The fact that they were competitive, and again, starting pitching gave you just about everything you need to beat Tennessee. You could argue take 2 out of 3 and maybe even sweep. I mean, you were in position to win every game. And that's a good sign. But again, this team's got to close those games out. They got to find a way. The bullpen's got to find a way, Joey. But overall, and you were there. I wasn't even there. I was watching, and it was fun. I can't imagine being there. So maybe we both make the trip to Knoxville next year.
Yeah, I think the rivalry is really healthy. And I think it was a lot chippier than people realized. The Thompson thing was, I think, the thing people saw, but there was something earlier in the game that I think incited the Vandy dugout a little bit, where somebody in the Tennessee dugout threw a ball at the Vandy dugout, and I think it was thrown a little harder than normally they are. And it wasn't like putting anybody in danger or anything, but I think that kind of got Vandy going a little bit, got them upset. But yeah, the JD Thompson thing, and then I think there was a lot of stuff that bubbled under the surface throughout the weekend that I don't think people realized, especially on Sunday, that I think was really interesting to see that the rivalry is still alive, Billy.
There's always something. There's always something. And I like it personally. I love watching these two teams go at it. And again, unfortunately for Vanderbilt, you don't win the series, but you do get one, you salvage, and now you head to Lexington and then Hoover for the SEC tournament. So another huge couple weeks here for Vanderbilt down the stretch, see if they can keep that momentum going. Joey, Coach Byington has kept the momentum rolling after maybe about a week and a half or so period of some quiet news weeks there, but they did recently get a commitment from Wright from USC. He's actually a Sierra Canyon product, and he'll be a junior, correct, Joey, this year?
He'll be a junior.
Okay, so he's already got 2 years under his belt at the college level. I know we had some people on the board asking if that was where Scottie Pippen Jr. went, and obviously it was, and Bronny James, of course, and a lot of good players coming out of Sierra Canyon. So I think that's something to look at here with Kijani Wright, McDonald's All-American, former 4-star. Obviously, he's got the size. You just pull up a picture of him, Google Images or whatever. He's got the size. Now, can he be what this staff wants at that position? We'll see. But I guess I'll start there, Joey, and then we'll roll through kind of the roster as a whole as it stands right now. But, I think every time they've gotten a commitment, we've tried to touch on these guys. You broke him down with a rapid reaction and a piece as well. But tell us about Kijani Wright, because I think, again, you look at him physically, he'll probably be fine. He'll probably be able to hold up. But throughout an SEC season And even stylistically, like how does he, I just wonder how he fits here with Byington.
Yeah, I think in a sense he's what they needed, and I think they do need more height. I still think I'm concerned about the front court, and I almost think Jalen Carey might be more of a factor than he is, because I think Jalen Carey is going to be really good. But I do think Wright is what they needed in a sense. They needed a guy who could come in and do dirty work. They needed a guy who could come in and rebound, and that was his best skill offensively this year was his offensive rebounding. I think he had a 26% offensive rebound rate or something crazy like that. 26% of his offense came from putbacks throughout the season. I think he's a much better athlete than people realize. I think he still has room to go in terms of being a physical low post guy, which I think he certainly has the ability to do. And I don't think he would have been a 4-star McDonald's All-American guy if that wasn't the case. But I think the ceiling's really high here, but there's a lot he hasn't proven at the college level, especially offensively. I think he has a chance to be a better defender than the numbers have indicated. I think he's physical. I think he is a better athlete than people give him credit for, but he's a really good rebounder. I think he's a better athlete than people realize. I think he's just what they need. I think a change of scenery and a better style fit for him can really help him. I think he's a guy who's probably better suited to play in a fast-paced offense, considering he's not a dominate the post guy. He's more of a modern type big, to where it's an interesting game that he has, because it's a lot of offensive rebounding. It's a lot of little like floaters, which you don't see from a 6'9" guy very often. He has nice touch. He has pretty nice mid range that I think is better than he showed in game. He can handle it a little bit. So I think he's a really good fit for what they want to do. I don't think he's Van Allen Lubin. I don't think he's as good as Van Allen Lubin is, but he almost might be a better fit even if Lubin was going to be more productive. And I think Lubin, I don't want this to come off as sour grapes about Lubin, because I think Lubin is really smart for what he did. There's very few guys in the portal that play his position as well as he does right now. And big men are more expensive than anybody else. So Van Allen Lubin made himself a lot of money, and he's going to go to a place that's better than Vanderbilt. So good for Van Allen Lubin. I know it's left a sour taste in people's mouths, but just looking at it from kind of an unbiased perspective, I think smart move by him. But Vandy had to find a way to replace him, and I don't know if they fully did that with Kajani Wright. He really has a lot to prove at the college level. He had less than 4 points a game last year, and his tape isn't all that impressive, but I think he has a chance to be unlocked in this system more than he had been previously as USC's third big.
Yeah, I think you've got a high floor here, Joey. And again, I haven't looked at a ton of his film. And again, he's not Van Allen Lubin, but he is 6'9", 235, maybe gets up to 240 in the weight room, and maybe even they turn him into potentially what Van Allen Lubin was and maybe could have been this year in this offense. He's a great rebounder, great defender, great motor. I mean, like I said, high floor. Like, you're not gonna get too many nights where Kajani Wright isn't giving you effort, right? I think that's the big thing there with him. He played in 29 games off the bench last year, averaged only 2 points and 2 rebounds, but more than half of his 53 rebounds were offensive rebounds. I think that's interesting, because Vanderbilt a lot of times last season, Joe, you looked at it and not much of an offensive rebounding threat of a team, right? And so I think getting more athletes out there, whether it's McLaughlin, Kajani Wright, let's see who else would be a threat. I think Mannon potentially be an offensive rebounding threat, Jalen Carey. So I think just having athletes. You're in the SEC, right? You need to create more ways to score and more opportunities for yourself. And I think Kajani Wright could potentially do that. So that's sort of the breakdown on Wright. And again, good pedigree coming from Sierra Canyon in California. He's got a couple of years of college, experience under his belt. He's like I said, he's a high floor guy. He's not Van Allen Lubin, like you said, Joey. And again, I'm with you with Van Allen Lubin. It was probably in the long run a smart decision for him. Disappointing for Vanderbilt. I think that probably put a wrench in some of their plans ultimately, because it was the last day to possibly do that. But at the end of the day, I think you have to look at what Byington and the staff has done and say, okay, they've done as good as they probably could have done so far with the pickups. And I think Kajani Wright keeps that rolling. Of course, everybody's looking at AJ Hoggard. Obviously, he was on campus on Saturday, up there, well documented up at the garage, on top of the 25th Avenue garage. So we'll see what happens there. I mean, obviously, nothing has happened yet since Saturday. But Joey, at the end of the day, Byington, it's hard to complain what they've done. And now if you finish it off with Hoggard, all of a sudden you're looking at a team that I think you believe could be fairly competitive in the SEC.
Yeah, I think they have really flipped the script here. And I don't know that they're going to be a tournament team year one, because I think here's my thought on this roster right now. I love all the individual pieces they have. I'm a little concerned about how it fits together in terms of what their front court looks like and the shooting that they have. They only really have a few guys who are proven three-point shooters at the Power 5 level, or proven three-point shooters generally. I think Edwards is one that you look at. They just signed him, actually, as we were recording this. MJ Collins, I think, can take a leap as a shooter. Tyler Nickel and Alex Hemingway, you know what you have there. Those are both two proven good shooters, although Nickel was only for 1 year. But so looking at that, there's 4. If you get Hoggard, it's 5. And then you look at the rest of their roster, and I just don't know if they have enough shooting, because Mannon was a low 30 shooter at Cornell, a guy that wasn't always guarded out there. McLaughlin, not a great shooter, not a guy they had to guard out there. Wright and Carey's a better shooter than Wright is by far. I think he can make some shots, but not a prolific shooter. I just don't know if they have enough shooting on the roster and enough in the front court. But just looking at the trend of what they have individually, pretty much every guy they've gotten this offseason is better than anybody they got last year, except for Van Allen Lubin. And they've got a guy in Jason Edwards who I think is better than Van Allen Lubin as a transfer. So I think they have a really solid roster, and every individual piece kind of tells you what they have recruiting wise. They're playing in a different league than they were with the previous staff recruiting wise. And that's the main takeaway I have from this offseason. They have done just about everything right, Billy. Like they've landed guys who are needle movers. They've catered to the fan base. You look at this weekend as a prime example. They're out on the 25th Avenue garage having fans recruit AJ Hoggard for them. I mean, that's a huge thing. And AJ Hoggard is a guy that Vanderbilt never would have been in the mix for with the previous staff. And the thing I was talking to you about before as well, this staff has missed on guys, right? Like they missed on Christian Reeves. They go Kajani Wright. They miss on They miss on Malik Dia. They go get a big with Jalen Carey. Like they've missed on guys, but that doesn't mean that they can't put a good class together, and they have put a good class together, even though everybody hasn't come to them, right? So yeah. I think the infrastructure of this program is really healthy. I think the NIL, evidenced by what they've done with Hoggard, I think is really healthy as well. I'm really optimistic about the future of this program, more so than I think I ever have been. And that's not even if they don't make the tournament this year. I mean, obviously that sucks for them, but who cares? Like they have done such a good job with this portal class and just shown that they are about the right things. They're going to do the right things. And I think they have a real chance to build a winner here just based on what they've done this offseason. They're about the right things recruiting-wise. They're putting in the effort. And I don't know, who knows what their roster fits like. Maybe it fits better than we think because of the system that they run, because I think these guys can fit better in an up-tempo system where you're not consistently having to play half-court offense. So who knows? I think they have a chance to maybe be better than we think, but they have a lot of pieces, Billy. They have a lot of guys who can do a lot of things well. They have a few proven shooters. They have a lot of really good guards, and if they get AJ Hoggard, they have a tremendous backcourt. Maybe not a Tyron Lawrence, Ezra Magnon preseason hype backcourt, but I think one that could be practically better than those two. So we'll see, but I really like what they have and what they've done as a whole. Even if I have some questions about the roster as a whole, they have some guys who are really, really good players that I didn't think they would be in the mix for heading into the offseason.
Yeah, the way they've embraced the portal, Joey, is the biggest thing to me, because one of the things I was scared of potentially is that maybe you keep 2-3 guys too many that you probably shouldn't have, and you look at it, JQ Roberts is the only guy, and the 2 freshmen coming in. And of course you got your guys like Graham Carlton and Messer and guys like that. But
no. What about Miles Keefe, Billy, and Jordan Williams?
Miles Keefe and Jordan Williams too.
Alabama or starter against Alabama his freshman year.
You can't forget about those guys. But
what an era!
What an era. We're out of it, thank goodness. But Joey, you also look at it. This team's going to be old. If they get Hoggard, who is a fifth-year senior, correct?
Yes, fifth year senior.
So Hoggard would be the fifth-year senior. He'd be the oldest guy on the team, of course, if they get him. Kajani Wright will be a junior. You've got more than half your guys as upperclassmen. Grant Huffman and Mannon are redshirt seniors. Devin McLaughlin is a redshirt junior. You've got three more juniors: Tyler Nickel, MJ Collins, and Jason Edwards. Kajani Wright is a junior. AJ Hoggard's a fifth-year senior. You're going to be old. And you've got some younger guys to support like Jalen Carey, JQ Roberts, Bilal, and Tanner. But I look at that, and I was looking at the roster layout. It's not like these guys are, a lot of times when you get transfers, you're going to, they're going to be juniors and seniors, but there are a lot of teams, Joey, that are getting those first-year freshmen where they might be a sophomore transfer and is still kind of a projectable type guy, but a lot of these guys are upperclassmen and have produced at their level. Now, again, they're in the SEC now. How does that translate? I think will be the question here. And, I think we'll determine where this team goes. But I was looking at that, Joey, just how old they are. And, if everything goes well, if everything goes perfect and this team is able to make the tournament in year one and pull off a South Carolina type season last year under Lamont Paris, even though that was Lamont Paris's second year, correct?
Yes, they were terrible first year.
Yeah, so awful his first year, but I think what Lamont Paris did in the offseason before year two, before last year, is similar. Now they got some pretty good players. BJ Mack was a really good player. They got was Michi Johnson to transfer, Joey?
Yes.
Okay, so I mean, you got some dudes out of the portal, and we think Vanderbilt can Jason Edwards be a Michi Johnson type? Can Tyler Nickel be that knockdown shooter you need? I think there's going to be some pressure on those guys, but it's going to come down to this staff and the way they associate with these guys. June 1st is the first time they get back and meet, so you still got, of course, several weeks, but that's what Byington said he's fired up about, and I think that's going to be key. Those summer months, June, July, and August, those are going to be the most important months. And you could argue these last couple months have been just getting the guys there and getting them committed. But Joey, even rolling along here in the next few months, it's going to be huge just to how do the guys buy in? Do they take well to the campus and things like that, the city? Do they stay out of trouble? Things like that. So I think, these next few months are going to be big as well. But at the end of the day, I don't think either of us, and Chris included, we've all said this, I don't think we could have predicted these last couple months in the way they have panned out for Vanderbilt basketball.
Yeah, I mean, they said they didn't want to rebuild, and they haven't. Like, they have a really good roster year one that, I mean, I don't know that any other staff could have put that together this quickly. Like, they have done a fantastic job. They've marketed the program. They've done a really nice job, and I think it starts May 15th. I think they're going to have some guys report early. I think Edwards, Hemingway, and Carey, I think, are going to be there early. So that'll be interesting. But, yeah, it's a huge summer. Not only just to be together, but I think this team in particular with all these new guys has to mesh together quickly. And it might not mesh together super quickly, but with all the new guys and defining roles and such, they need to be able to be here this summer and be ready to go. So it's going to be a big summer for them, just figuring out role allocation, figuring out what lineups work, because obviously the shooting thing is going to be a question. What guys can make shots consistently in the SEC? I don't know. But yeah, that's my thought. And back to your experience piece, I think it's also interesting. It's not just guys that are experienced. A lot of these guys are experienced in Power 5 leagues. You look at MJ Collins was in the ACC for 2 years. Tyler Nickel was in the ACC for 2 years, played a lot in one of those years, not the other one. Hemingway's a 4 or 5 year, I think he's a 5-year player in the ACC. Mm-hmm. And then I'm blanking, Kajani Wright, guy in the Pac-12. So they have a lot of guys who have done a lot in Power 5 leagues already. And I think that's inherently really valuable. Devin McLaughlin, a guy who's played a lot in the ACC. So they got a chance to not only be an old team, but a team that has shown that they can do it before. And obviously this roster fits different than some of those other guys. Some of those other guys will be more of focal points than they have been in the past. Some will be less of focal points than they have been in the past. But the depth that they have and the experience that they have, not only experience generally like Grant Huffman has, but experience in Power 5 leagues like Devin McLaughlin has, they got a chance to be a team that is a really tough out, especially if they can land AJ Hoggard to kind of finish off the roster.
Yeah, it's hard to find any liabilities on this roster right now, Joey, either. Like, obviously you've got your 4 walk-ons and you've got the couple of freshmen, but I don't know how much Tyler Tanner and Karis Bilal are going to play. I mean, I don't know how much, which isn't a bad thing. Of course, they're freshmen, and you really probably shouldn't have your, a couple of freshman guards playing right away. But you look at it, Joey. I mean, this team, you go through the line, you're like, okay, even if, say, for example, Hoggard commits, Hoggard goes down. He gets hurt. This is all example a month into the season. Well, you still got a guy like Grant Huffman or even Jason Edwards, but Grant Huffman likely, of course, who would be the ball carrier there. I mean, Huffman's played. This is 5th year, correct? I mean, he's played 4 years at Davidson. I know it's not a Power 5 level, of course, but he's played a ton of basketball. Mm-hmm. So I think the reserves, a lot of times in the Stack era, your reserve options were guys that just haven't even played Power 5 basketball. Mm-hmm. And at this point, I know Huffman feels like a guy, even technically he hasn't, but he's played a ton of basketball. Obviously, Jason Edwards has. So your reserves here, your depth pieces will be so much better than what they had been in the past. Mm-hmm. And I just think stylistically too, they've been smart about who they're getting, who they want. Right, Chris Mannon. I look at him as kind of an maybe not an X factor, but a guy that, if he plays the way he's capable of, Joey, then you're starting to think about this team being dangerous. But it could also turn the other way. So a lot of it is up to these guys, panning out actually. But you got to give credit to the staff as well. The assistants, Rick Ray, Xavier Joyner. I know Matt Schultes was up there in the garage with AJ Hoggard. And you've got other guys like Matt Buckland as well. That's a good staff. I know I'm leaving a guy out, John Cremens as well. I mean, they've done their. Who was the other one?
Tom Ostrom from Indiana.
Oh yeah, Ostrom as well.
Heck of a recruiter. I don't think I've shared this actually, but when I talked to Grant Huffman, he was telling me that was his primary recruiter, and I thought it was really interesting. This was about a month after Huffman had committed to Vandy, I think, and he was telling me that Ostrom came down and ate lunch with him like 2 days before. So it shows you the priority of the staff is a lot different than it has been in the past. And they have a lot of guys who have proven it, who have good track records. And even John Sanderson, who's expected to be named the strength coach, like that's a guy who has experience doing a lot of things for a big program in Michigan and is very well regarded around the business. So they built a heck of a staff, Billy.
Every Vanderbilt team, especially the big 3, football, basketball, baseball, should be very well coached, should be smart, should be fundamental. I think that's exactly what this team is going to be. I don't know how good they're going to be, Joey, but they're going to be well coached. You've got a ton of experience, starts at the top with Byington. You've got Sanderson. I mean, Sanderson, one of the best strength coaches in the country, if not the best. So let's not forget about that either. Some of these guys, what they look like now, may not look the way they did, 3 months from now. So that's going to be interesting. Already looking forward to our first availability just to get those guys in here and talk to Byington, of course, talk to players. But I mean, this is crunch time as well these next few months because, if you're not able to build that chemistry that you'd like to in these summer months, maybe you get off to a slower start. But if you can hit the ground running here in those summer months and then get into, of course, the preseason, that's going to tell us a lot. So, Joey, at the end of the day, I've said it once, I'll say it again. I just think the way they have interacted with the fans as well, I think has been huge. I mean, Byington going up there in the garage and I mean, just embracing it and being one with the fans, I think has been huge. You just hadn't seen that in the last 5 years, and now they've got it. And I think that's another peg, on the path to getting this team to the tournament that I think will help them. So. Obviously, these next few months will be big. We'll see what happens with AJ Hoggard. Of course, I mean, you would guess something happens here in the next week or so, Joey, maybe sooner, maybe later. Again, we don't know. And this is probably a situation where there's not a ton of pressure. I mean, if they've already made a decision, then okay, it's already happened. But at the end of the day, it's it's probably the last guy you're going to get. I don't think they're going to lose anybody. But this is going to be a big next few months, nonetheless, to just see where this program is. But that'll do it. Joey, got our baseball, got our basketball, and of course, like I mentioned earlier, big weekend for Vanderbilt baseball as well. They'll be in Lexington. And Joey, any parting thoughts before we head out?
Yeah, I feel a little better about baseball than I did. I still think the rivalry against Tennessee has been so one-sided, and it needs to not be. But basketball, I feel good about. Probably better than I feel about baseball at this point, which is crazy to say. But I just think they're about the right things. I think they've shown that. I like all the individuals they've made. I think you could tell that through the rapid reactions. My main question is just about the fit. And I think they have some deficiencies in their roster, but that's not because they don't have good players. And I think good players can overcome roster deficiencies and things like that. And I think that's a huge thing for this team. They have good players. They have guys who seem to be about the right things and seem to be about attacking and playing up tempo and playing hard, high motor guys that Byington has recruited. So I like what they have. I like what they're about. Now it's a big summer for them, and we'll talk more about the summer, I'm sure. Hopefully being availability in June, I think, is what they've talked about. So we'll see. But AJ Hoggard, the guy we're waiting on now to see what happens with, he's a guy who would be a needle mover for this team. I don't know that he's first team All-SEC guy or second team All-SEC guy, but he's a guy who's a difference maker. He does a lot of things well. He's really versatile. I think a guy who can do a lot of things for a team that needs a guy who can do a lot of things, needs a Swiss Army knife. He almost reminds me of like a Jordan Wright in that aspect, to where he can do a lot of things well for you. Maybe he doesn't do one thing exceptionally well, but he's just a solid all-around player. I think I feel pretty good about where they're at. I can't guarantee anything, but I think they've got a chance there, and we'll see, Billy. But a bright future from the looks of it for Vanderbilt men's basketball, and it's been a while since we could say that without trying to positively spin it or something along those lines. I don't know. I think I was pretty blunt in the preseason, but they've got a chance, Billy. And I don't know that they're a tournament team, but they've got the pieces.
No more spin zone. I mean, we're putting it out there, and I think we both pretty firmly agree on what this team could potentially be. Now, we still got a lot of time in between, of course, but man, what an icing on the cake AJ Hoggard for Michigan State would be. And again, I think we both know he wants to be at Vanderbilt. Again, we'll see what happens. But at the end of the day, even if they weren't able to get Hoggard for some, catastrophic reason, that's still a good class. But Hoggard adding to that, man, that's impressive. So we'll see what happens. Joey, appreciate your time. We got a big weekend for Vanderbilt baseball. Of course, a big next few months here and another big week maybe to finalize Hoggard for Vanderbilt basketball. But thanks for tuning in, everybody, and we'll see you a little bit later this week for another Vandy Sports Podcast.